Oh, what is up, everybody? Look at all these books next to me. We must be doing a book show. That's right. It's going to be a great night. It's a Monday. We're all back together for the first time in a while. We're talking the Foundational 5, the Sensational 6, the Elite 8, the 9, and there goes my door buzzer. Wes, punch it. Hello, everyone! Welcome to the Living Force Youtini Network podcast, where even the hosts would rather be playing Lego Star Wars. I am one of those hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me tonight is the full crew. We're back, all of us, for the first time in a few weeks to talk about the Foundational 5. What's that? We'll get to that in a moment, but first, let's welcome back the man who, hasn't been robbed. It's Dr. Corey Helton.
Oh, that's quite an intro. Hello, everyone. Back from the dead. Thought I was going to die on Monday, but I survived. Miraculously.
You did it. You survived. That's right, folks. If you're wondering, that's
I'm still here.
Corey is still
but
here.
I did have something. I did have achieved kind of a lifelong dream today. Actually, I became a regular at a restaurant. That's like everybody's dream, right?
That's right.
Like you go to a restaurant and they're like, "It's you, the regular, right?" And you're like, "Yep, that's what I want." And you just take your seat, and they got that. That happened to me today.
The usual, Corey? Is that what you need?
The usual, yes. The usual. Although I have to say, I did not expect it to occur in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. So
They said, take a seat. They said, keep sitting in your car.
Right? Exactly.
That's actually more impressive because they go through just thousands of people a day.
They do. I'm sitting in my car, and the little lady with the iPad, I pull up, and she's got the iPad to take my order, and she goes, "It's Corey, right?" And I was like, "Holy crap! How did you know that?" And she goes, "I just remember the regulars," and I was like, "I don't know what this means. I don't know what this means for me."
Got one of
Do
those
I come
days.
too often?
Well, thank goodness you're moving.
This is when
Yes.
Corey tells us that he only goes to Chick-fil-A drive-thru on Sundays.
Oh, God.
That's right. Well, I'm proud of you for achieving that dream. I've achieved my lifelong dream because I finally get to see Dr. Charles Hankel again. What's up, man?
Hey, I'm back. A year older, a year wiser, a year more tired. Seriously, guys, I'm so tired. Is this what almost 30 is?
Yes,
All
it
right,
is, and it just gets
great.
worse.
Great things ahead.
Well, happy belated, buddy. Then, of course, we have the constant, The Rock, the only one of you losers who has stood by me every week. It's Wes Jenkins, whose camera isn't working.
Wes Jenkins. For the audio listeners, it's just a blank screen.
You know what?
Blank
Screw it. This is
screen.
it. This is what
Please
what I look
use
like
that-
today.
Use that voice modulator like you're in witness protection.
This is terribly. Wes.
Wes is here. He's just in a really dark room.
Lord. I'm doing really well. I just like to tell everybody that yes, my power went out, but the computer is still on for some reason. So
Your power went out. What? That can't be a good sign.
weird, right? No, just because I have a blank screen, Corey. Go along with the joke.
Oh,
All right, well, I'm glad that
fell for
y'all are
that.
here. Anyway, let's get Jared and Emma back so we can have a good show. Anyway, hi, everyone in the chat. Good to see you this evening. As I said earlier, tonight we are diving into the Youtini Foundational 5. This is one of the benchmarks, the foundational points of our site, and we haven't looked at it in a while. So we are starting that process, and we wanted to start it off by getting you, the community, involved. So a little bit of that later on. But a couple things before we get to that. Y'all, giant event happened last week in the Star Wars community. I was a little bit glib about it earlier, but I think it's a real thing. Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga has legitimately taken over Star Wars fandom the past week. Like, do you guys ever remember seeing, like, this many people simultaneously doing a thing since, like, the first episode of Mandalorian? Like, it's been kind of weird.
And enjoying it, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, right? That's a great point. That is a great point.
There's a weird and excellent amount of positivity surrounding this game, which is wild to me. It's very wild to me. It's like apparently Lego is that other thing in the Star Wars fandom that is kind of untouchable. right?
Yeah.
Like,
Maybe we just all take this too seriously. Maybe that's what this means.
Maybe that's
Maybe
what
it
they
is.
taught
Just
us.
know it. Hey, this is just supposed to be fun. It is fun.
They
Yeah, 'cause
have really good jokes that go along with everything that we've all said to each other, and they just put it into form
Yep.
so we can all laugh
it's
together
fantastic.
with each other.
And like the ship combat is a little better than squadrons. I'm sorry. Like it's easier.
is. It is.
It's easier.
It is
legitimately better.
Yeah. I never played any of the Lego games as a kid, so I didn't even have the nostalgia going in, but I tell you what, I've been playing almost every night, just like turning off my brain and breaking apart the studs. I started in the original trilogy. I'm in Phantom Menace now, so it's been fun seeing a lot of folks both in Discord and Twitter or Slack, just everywhere. Folks, I think, just wanted to play some freaking Lego games and relax.
Yeah.
So shout out
It's
to everyone
fun.
that's playing
It's real
it.
fun. It's real. It's real grindy, but in like a relaxing and fun way. Like it's fun. I really enjoyed it. It's
And
fun.
Emma from the Cosmic Force, she brought Youtini game nights back from the dead.
Yes, she
and
did.
she played for a couple hours on 2 streams, and that game it's silky smooth. It's like it's really fluid when you're watching it, so it's fun to watch.
The animation is beautiful.
Yeah, it's fun to watch, not alone just play.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it
as
is.
JG says in the chat, he also brought this up to us earlier this week. There's story crawls, as we all know, before you start each mission. But when you go back, don't be like me and skip the crawl because you think it's just loading you in. It is actually a brand new crawl after each mission that like recaps you, and they're really funny. So if nothing else, you learned a little something from us. Another piece of actual news, though, we did get to confirm something this week. That is another little fun thing we're doing for Star Wars Celebration. As we said before, we do have a panel and a booth coming up that we're very excited about. But Corey, we confirmed one more event that we'll be hosting. We made a poster. We made a page. What can people look forward to on Star Wars Celebration aside from all the actual Star Wars things?
My lovely face. You're going to get to see me live and in person. We are achieving another legitimate Youtini lifelong dream that I've been looking forward to for a long time. And we're going to do this last time at Celebration, but then Celebration got canceled. We are throwing an official Youtini party. Free for everyone to come. Celebration. Credit to Eric. Credit to Eric for that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have a. It's not a brewery. It's kind of like a. I don't know what these things are called. It's like they're popping up all over the U.S. though. It's like almost like a central area that have all these like little vendors at them, and there's like all this seating and like an open space and like, but it doesn't like. The venue itself doesn't like belong to any of these. Have you guys been to one of these? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
it's a shared space.
Yeah, it's like a shared space, and they're not like restaurants at the shared space. It's like food trucks, but they're like part of the venue. It's really interesting and weird, right? But they're popping up all over the U.S. I went to one in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago. But anyway, that's where we're going. Still Garden Grove. It's about 5 minutes Uber ride from the convention center, so it's like right around the corner. It might be a little outside of walking distance, about a 30-minute walk. I don't know if that's outside of walking distance. I don't live in a big city. Eric, is that outside of walking distance?
I'd say it's a little outside of walking distance after being in a convention center for like 9 hours.
Yeah,
so
It
that's
depends
fair.
on the
That's
person
fair.
more than the city. Just say.
Yeah,
that's true.
The venue is really cool. Still Garden Grove. Shout out to Freddie from Legends Look Back for finding this place for us. Freddie lives in Anaheim, basically, and hooked us up with this really cool venue. He knew it. He's been there a bunch of times, and they have all these like restaurants all around. So there's food available if you want to get dinner. There's a brewery right in there, so we're gonna have plenty of beer. There's a tea place if maybe you don't want alcoholic beverages. Like there's a ton of really awesome stuff. It's gonna be a really good time. I think we're gonna.
Oh
yeah, look at that. Look at that
It's
chicken.
mac
dude.
and
I know.
cheese in the
It's gonna
burger.
be amazing.
Yeah. It looks good. It looks good. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're still working on exactly what the entertainment's going to be, but we have some really cool ideas. I mean, I think the going thing right now is to do kind of like a Saturday Night Live-esque type of thing where we kind of put up a stage and we have us with the Living Force. And we have a couple other folks, good
a
friends
late
of
night
ours.
thing. SNL is improv comedy.
yeah.
We're not doing
Sorry.
improv comedy.
No
We're doing
improv
a late
comedy.
night
Yeah,
show.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
going to be a lot
we're
of
gonna-
fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's free to everybody, so come hang out with us 6 to 9 p.m. on Saturday, May 28th. This is the same night as the emo. What's that called? The mosh pit thing.
The
What is-
Mosh
Isley.
Mosh Isley,
Isley,
which looks
yeah.
amazing. That's later in the night, so if you're going to that, one, awesome, it looks incredible. come stop by beforehand. Come say hey, like Corey said. We're just probably going to set up some mics and have some fun and bring us maybe other podcasts we've been talking to. People are going to come on and just kind of have a good time. This will be after 3 days of celebration, so we'll have announcements probably to chat about.
Yeah,
we're just going to have a great time and all as many
it's a celebration.
Yes.
It's a celebration of celebration and the last couple of years of books and comics and Youtini. It's a celebration of the success we've had to ourselves in the last couple of years. And, we're finally, this will be the first time that the great majority of us will have ever seen each other in person. A couple of us went to Asheville together and everything, and that's coming up on Patreon. So if you're not a Patreon supporter, that documentary is coming out eventually. But this will be the first time a lot of us have gotten to meet. So it's kind of like the Youtini company in-person party in a lot of ways. It's going to be a lot of fun. Really chill, really casual. For more details, check out youtini.com/celebration. Check it out. Check it out. There's an RSVP link on there and everything. Free, like I said, free to everybody, 6 to 9 p.m. on Saturday. Come hang out. I've been told, don't quote me on this. I am cross my fingers. I've been told that the Wi-Fi is very good at this place. And if that is the case, then we'll live stream the whole event. And hopefully we can make that happen. So we'll see. We're going to do the best we can. But, there's a lot of people in LA. So I can tell you for sure it's pretty much impossible to live stream anything on the show floor at Celebration.
Oh, yeah, I know.
We're going to try to create some content and post it later and stuff, but it's going to be impossible to live stream anything on the show floor. I mean, the internet's atrocious. You can barely send pictures to other people. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So
no. Much like what Obi-Wan says to Anakin, don't try it. But do try to come out to our party. Can't wait to see you. And more details on all the other things in Celebration to come. Now, speaking of something Corey just slipped in there, our Patreon community, we want to say thank you to everyone on our Patreon. That makes everything that we do possible. The Asheville documentary, of course, is still being edited and is our $1,000 Patreon goal. But before that, we have our $900 Patreon goal, which is our Infinity's Youtini Network Multiverse event. But before that, we have hit the goal. And we are finally recording it. That's right, folks. We are finally recording our Revenge of the Sith commentary this week. There were life delays, horrible things happened, all kinds of stuff. But we're going to do it this week, so look forward to that in your Patreon feeds coming up within probably the next week and a half or so. Cannot wait to watch this movie. It's great. Spoiler. But look for that. And if, of course, you want to check out that or any of the fun stuff over at our Patreon community, check out patreon.com/Youtini. You can listen to cool things like the latest episode of Star Wars Archives that came out yesterday, which was, according to Trev, the most, researched, packed, informative episode they've ever had, which, if you know the Star Wars Archives, is saying quite a lot. All right. Now we only have a couple things on the Star Wars Weekly Roundup. Let's go!
It's the Star Wars Weekly Roundup.
I love that drop. Two things this week we want to highlight. Mike Chen is writing, or has written, rather, Star Wars Brotherhood, which is going to be released on May 10th. And if you want to get a signed copy of that book, make sure that you tune in on Monday, May 9th. Don't worry, we won't be offended. It's okay. It's a Living Force night. But Mike Chen will be doing a virtual launch event with Delilah S. Dawson, one of our favorites, author of Phasma and Black Spire. They'll be celebrating the release of Brotherhood with a bunch of cool stuff. Wes has the link here on the screen. They're doing it through a local bookshop that allows you to order signed copies. If you go to the link that's going to be in the description, and also on Mike Chen's Twitter and all these things, you can RSVP for free, and you can buy a signed copy of the book from Mike, sit in, hear him chat with Delilah, and it's going to be just a great time for all book lovers, of course. More details to come with that, but we know that signed copies are kind of a big thing in our community, so we want to let you know this is how you get them. I do believe the signed copies are U.S. only, so for international listeners, as we always are, I'm sorry. Constantly sorry that it's harder for you to get signed copies, except for Goldsboro, where our UK people can just go down the street. But I hope that there will be signed copies of Brotherhood for you all later, but be sure to go check that out. And another piece of news we kind of knew this was happening, but we confirmed this week that all of the Phase 1 High Republic main authors, the main five, the foundational five, if you will, are all confirmed to be guests at Star Wars Celebration. So, fellas, I got a big question for you. What are you going to bring to get signed by all five of them? And Charles,
oh man,
what would you bring to get signed by all five of the authors?
What am I sending along with you guys?
Yes, that's right. What's going in the suitcase?
I feel like I would bring like my Light of the Jedi copy.
Yeah,
Just like
that's a
as
good
the
one.
start of everything. That would be pretty insane.
That would be cool. That would be cool. That's one of the few things I kept, actually. That's a good idea. I might actually do that because, like, as you guys know, I went full digital this year and sold everything. Like, literally have nothing in my house. My office is even empty. It's kind of ridiculous. And I still have Light of the Jedi back there, though. So maybe I'll just bring that along.
That's the one. I like that.
Yep.
I like that. I'm going to be bringing my, if folks have seen pictures of my wall setup, I have this big poster. That's like a promotional poster for the High Republic right before the Fallen Star came out. It has all the characters on them, and I'm probably gonna like roll that in a poster tube and then just carry that and have all 5 of them sign that. That's my goal.
That'd be sick. I like it.
I
Gotta be honest,
want to
though,
hug them.
I didn't even not even occur to me that we could maybe do that at
Yeah,
celebrations.
right?
But that's true. And the
They sign
lines
stuff.
the lines to get things signed by authors is usually not too bad. You're not standing in line for hours or anything. I mean, usually you show up, 30, 40 minutes before they start signing and you can get stuff signed.
Yeah.
So it's it's doable for sure.
Yeah.
We
just have a good
talked about tattoos, matching tattoos, the celebration. Just get them to sign your body and then tattoo over the signatures.
Charles, don't mess with me.
I want Daniel Jose Older's signature as a teardrop tattoo, like right under my right eye.
Oh,
just like,
Lord.
Well, Corey, that'd be great because then you don't have to buy anything else. It won't take up space. It's on your face.
That's right. That doesn't
great.
count.
That's
That's
perfect for you.
minimalism.
Have you purchased an autograph yet? Either of you?
No, I have
Nope.
official autographs. I have not yet. Have you?
I have.
Ooh,
I have
what'd you
purchased
buy?
an autograph. It's not an author, unfortunately, but
Yeah, they're not up yet. That's fine.
Okay, it is. It's Carl Weathers. I bought a Carl
nice.
Weathers autograph
Dude.
because I missed him. Actually, I didn't miss him. All his autographs got sold out when he was at Comic Palooza in Houston.
Right.
So I have so many ideas of what I want him to sign.
Oh my
and,
God.
And none of them are Star Wars, unfortunately. But this is one. I'm going to throw this picture up now. Is what I'm thinking that I want to get signed, like
man.
a poster
Oh.
size of. Rocky 2 is probably one of my all-time favorite movies. But I mean, he's been in so many different movies that I could get Happy
that's
Gilmore.
fantastic.
I could get Predator. I mean, there's so many different. Like I could
Wes,
get
can you get
Chicago
the trunks?
Bears.
Can you get the USA trunks and just wear them to Celebration and have him sign them?
I have a
for
friend that
Rocky
dressed
2?
up as him for Halloween, so I could get him to sign that picture.
There you
That's
go.
amazing. That's amazing.
That's a great call. Ashley Eckstein's autographs already sold out. I thought about doing that. I am going to try
heard.
to see if I can run into Ashley at Disneyland on the Wednesday because I wonder if she'll maybe be walking around. But I kind of want to see like the full roster of people, which is a bad tactic because they're gonna sell out at various times. But I'm like, man, I don't know. I haven't bought autographs before. I got the photo obviously with Hayden,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
It's really easy to fall into the trap with that, like because like you can end up spending literally your entire celebration in lines to get autographs. Like it's kind of insane how much. I will say it's insane how much overlap there is a celebration. It is not possible to do everything. Like there's always 5 different panels going and 3 different events, and it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah. But let us know, everyone, if you are going to Celebration and you have bought autographs or you're excited for some folks that don't have like purchasable autograph, but like authors you can just go up and see. What are you most excited to see? What are you bringing? We're in the lead up. We're about a month and a half away. So it's just very exciting that it's all getting very real. I want to hear what you're bringing to Celebration. And of course, once you get it signed, we want to see pictures. Make sure to send them our way. But beforehand, you have books to order. Did you think we forgot? Of course we didn't. Head over to Youtini.com to the release schedule and make sure you get that pre-order, signed or not, in for Brotherhood by Mike Chen. That's coming out on May 10th. Shadow of the Sith has got to be waiting for you when you get back from Celebration. That's coming out on June 28th from Adam Christopher. And Padawan by Kirsten White is coming out July 26th. We're keeping with our book a month or so. So make sure to get those pre-orders in to get them day that they come out. And with that, I'm going to get a little more spit in my mouth as I'm drying out a bit. So let's take a quick break. I can rehydrate. And then we are going to tell you all about the Youtini Foundational 5 and where it might be evolving. Change? I don't know. We'll be right back.
It's the best back cover since Star Wars Episode 1 hardcover novelization. The one with young Anakin, because on the back, just to remind y'all, It's a full headshot of Watto.
It's so big. It's
I think
so
I brought
large.
this up on one of the earliest episodes of the Living
my
Force
God, yeah.
ever, and I thought I'd bring it back.
Oh my God, yeah.
Series and all of Legends. What do you guys think? Could it be the X-Wing series? Might just be the
It
most
was pretty
romance
steamy.
Oh,
intensive series ever. And we're not just talking about the scene where Corin Horn describes his love affair with an otter. I mean, a Salonian that he hooked up with her and then he broke out in chives.
Yeah, not chives.
In
Not
chives.
chives.
What's it called? The bumps?
Hives, dude. Hives.
Chives
so
go on your
sorry.
potato.
I'm hearing you say the same thing.
Chives,
What
what
is-
you put on the under potato. No C. Hives.
Hives.
Not
What'd I
chives.
say?
Chives.
It's not a very common story to approach. Yeah, again, drawing the complex family tree of Django to clone identical son to clone all identical millions of sons, but they're a generation older. So then the son is kind of all Django's equal, but then Boba is a generation younger. But then that clone's son is Boba's age. But then is Boba his dad or his nephew or his uncle or his cousin? It's like.
Oh, hello there. Welcome back.
You got spit in your mouth
I-
now?
Yeah, I do. I got spit in my mouth. I'm all ready to speak about Star Wars
Disgusting.
books.
Never say that again.
Listen to Corey Drymouth Helton over here. All right. All right, fellas.
What is happening right now?
You
Right
started.
man.
I just got to be honest with the folks. I'm never going to lie to y'all. But I will tell you all about a certain thing that we did when we started the site, which was the Foundational 5. So, for those of you that haven't heard of the Foundational 5, fellas, what is it? What is its purpose, and why did we make it? Let's just, because we haven't talked about it in a while.
Yeah. This is early Youtini foundational stuff that we're talking about here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we developed the Foundational 5 maybe when it was just me and you, Eric, honestly,
Yeah.
back in the day. And I think it was a little bit different back then than what it is now. But we knew that, if the mission of Youtini is going to be to get people into books and comics, we have to have books to recommend them that are the first
Right.
things. But we took this conversation really, really seriously early on, and we didn't want to just pick 5 books we liked. We knew there had to be criteria, right? Because
Yeah, right.
if you're going to recommend to someone get into Star Wars books, you want to recommend them something that's going to hook them, right? So we determined that there's several things that make a book really good to be a first book for a new person to read and someone new to the Star Wars book to read. And some of the criteria are something that is obviously very, very good, right? Top tier quality content, just the cream of the crop, some of the best Star Wars books that have ever been written, right? That has to be a criteria. It has to be a good segue into Star Wars in general, right? So it can't be something that's too complicated or too wordy, or it draws on way too much expanded universe information. It has to be something approachable, I guess is a good way to think about it, right? Not
A low
like
barrier
me.
to entry.
Yeah, low barrier
Yeah.
to entry is a good way to put it. Not like me. I read the first Invincible by Troy Denning, right? It was the 9th book in a series. It's not what you want to read first, right?
Forever a miracle that you still read these things. I will never
Yeah.
not be dumbfounded.
Seriously is. Seriously is. It needed to be. We kind of considered author somebody that's kind of important to the important to Star Wars books and comics. And what else do we talk about? What else is in there? I think that's the big stuff.
One of the things, we talked about that it has to be a book that if you read it, there is a path forward to go. So it can't just be a great book that isn't connected to anything. That is oh, that's it. It has to be something that still has relevance or value to the larger publishing world, which is why. And the format of tonight's show, what we're going to do, folks, we're going to go through the current Foundational 5, walk through why each of these belong in that list, and then we have a couple others that we're going to talk about, because the whole purpose of this show in this next month or so behind the scenes is to re-examine the Foundational 5 and see if it needs to shift, because we've had like 2 years of Star Wars releases since this. The landscape of literature has changed. The authors have changed. Star Wars has changed. So we need to change with it. And I think when we made the Foundational 5, for the time period in which we wrote it, we're like, if you're just coming into Star Wars books now, or you've read a couple, but you want to be part of the community at large, you should probably read these 5. And if you do, you'll know what your taste is, because it's varied enough that you can know what you like. And you can kind of have a base knowledge to chat with folks. Because that's also a thing, Corey, that we talked about.
Yeah.
Was like, in conversation, these books tend to come up amongst books fans. Like, more often than not, and you can kind of carry yourself in the conversation. And so, but since then, there's just been some shifts. So Charles and Wes, I want to ask you guys too, because obviously we've all been around for a while. You weren't there in these first talks, but in your opinion, how do you think the Star Wars book landscape has really changed since like August 2020 is when we published the article about the Foundational 5, but it's even older than that. Like,
Yeah,
what
Charles
is
actually might have
different
been there
about
for
this?
those early conversations.
I
Like, because
think
we
we've literally
Were
on
you?
this show, we've figured out that you emailed Corey like a week before me, but we
Yeah,
talked about
yeah,
these
yeah.
good old days.
I was gonna say,
pre-Charles.
I know,
that-
yeah, the good old
Charles, that
Charles,
week
but
without you was golden.
It was
and then
very
it was fine.
busy. It was
But,
a
like,
very busy week.
what
we
a
got so
weird-
much work done, bro. Once you showed up, man, it all went to shit.
No, it's a really good question though, and the obvious first part of the answer is that they started just pumping out books. Like
Yeah,
like there
volume.
was a lull, right, when Disney bought everything. And it's like, okay, how are we
Uh-huh.
going to reset this, and how are we going to do this? And now it's like we can honestly barely keep up with the roundtables and stuff.
Yeah,
Like
for
there's
sure.
so a metric ton of material has come out, not to mention an entirely new era that has dominated the past
Right.
year. So I think the pure volume and then the High Republic together have just completely changed what we know
Yes,
as
yeah.
Star Wars publishing since
Well, bet.
the Foundational 5 was actually made.
Right. I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's also been additions. There's a lot of representation that's been added, which has been sorely needed in Star Wars. And then, like you said, the High Republic, a whole new era. Well, I mean, it's a whole new story for everybody to get into, not just
Yeah.
somebody that's been
Yeah.
reading Star Wars forever. They don't know, A from Z when they're reading a High Republic book because it's brand new to everyone. So that could be a
sure.
great addition to
Yeah.
the Foundational 5 or the
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're in. It's like you say, we're in kind of this like golden age of Star Wars books right now. It feels like, and
Yeah.
those early canon years were a little tough. Not gonna lie, like some of those. So it's like I would definitely say that the bell curve of quality of books. I bet the peak of the curve and the upper bits of the curve would be most books are probably in the last 3 years. I bet though
Yeah.
at least the books in the last 3 years are more likely to be in the center of the bell curve of quality and importance and all that kind of stuff. And I think when so we've been having this conversation for, I think it got first brought up about a year ago on the Youtini team that maybe we should have another look at our Foundational 5. Interestingly, we only have one canon book on the Foundational 5, which we're going to go through in a second.
Yeah.
And
Even
like,
though we're
everything
all
else
just
is
Disney,
legends.
we're Disney shills, of course.
That's
Let's
right.
remember
Disney
this.
shills.
We're-
There's only one canon book on there, and I think that is not. That doesn't mean that canon wasn't good when we set this list out. I mean, canon has been excellent since it started, but like the Legends books, man, some of them are just top tier and still are top tier. So like.
Yes.
It's hard to say that like we had to kick all the Legends off and replace it with canon and but I don't know, man. The High Republic really just changed everything. So like there's a lot of talk there. So Eric, you have kind of a plan for how you want to do this, I think, right?
I do. This is so every once in a while, Corey comes to me and says, "Hey, Eric, you have a project, and you're gonna head this project." It's not often because I will admit I am not great at big picture stuff. I love running the show. I love Youtini. I love doing my stuff. Corey is an amazing big picture thinker. A lot of the folks on our team think that well. But every once in a while, I get a passion project. And this Foundational 5 is something that I'm very passionate about. I love a lot. So I have thought a lot about this in accordance with this show. So the combination of my little project and this podcast is beautiful. So here's how I want this to run tonight, folks. And this is for all of you in the chat as well. I'd love your help. We're going to run through all 5 of the Foundational 5 books currently. And this is not a conversation about why we should get rid of anything. All we're doing tonight is presenting all the books on this list that we have, and we're going to say why it belongs, all of them. Even if it may not make it in eventually, we would still want to tell you why we think it should be in there. And you in the chat, we want your support. Do you think this book should stay? Do you think this book should replace something? It's all a conversation because as a community, as a Youtini community, we are helping new readers figure out what 5 books should be your foundation. And you all are also part of that community. So we would love that feedback, love that help. So to start off, I'm going to do the easiest part of this entire night, which is picking Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. This book is number 1 in the Youtini reading order. It is a book that we constantly say should be people's first Star Wars book for now. Again, who knows where that goes. But let's start off with just a little bit of information about this book. This book, for those of you that have not read it and those that have, was part of the Journey to Star Wars The Force Awakens publishing initiative released all the way back on September 4th of 2015. This book's almost 7 years old, y'all.
Wow.
I know. That was kind of weird and aged me just reading that.
That is, yeah, that kind of hits
It's been
me
here
hard.
a while. Canon's been a bit. This has a remarkably high score on Youtini. The reason that I think it belongs in the Foundational 5, and it should stay there, is because for barrier to entry, it might not get easier than this book.
Yeah,
This
for
book
sure.
takes the original trilogy events, like the destruction of the Death Star, like the Battle of Hoth, all kinds of things, all the way up to the Battle of Jakku, and tells that story within the lens of new characters, which is kind of the great thing about publishing. So while not ignoring all the movies, it still embraces the style of the books, yet lets new readers say, no, you know what this is. You know what planet this is. You know what a Death Star is. And really kind of perfectly combines what's so great about both mediums of entertainment, while also just being an amazingly solid read and character study. I think Thane and Sienna are 2 of the most prevalent characters in the literature, despite, spoiler, I guess, literally only being in this book. They have not shown up in almost 7 years. But they're incredibly important in this book. Their relationship is great. It shows the Empire and the Rebellion as living entities without being like, the Empire was right, which is insane, but also being like, this war is hard on all people and good people can make bad decisions for the right reasons. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Solid take.
yeah, I don't think this is going to lead the Foundational 5, but it was the first
There's no
choice
way.
we ever made. It was the first choice we ever made to put in the Foundational 5 for a reason.
Yeah.
Also,
no way,
it's
man.
it's YA, and I
Yeah, it
think
is.
it's important
Didn't
to
even
talk about
mention it.
some YA
Yep.
representation in the
Please do.
Foundational
Sure.
5 as well. They are easier to read. I mean, that book is a breeze. Like
Yeah, and it's like
from
500 pages.
Yeah,
but it
it's
doesn't.
a big book, but it doesn't feel
remember,
that way.
You remember we talked about like a couple weeks ago. I think I said something about why books are really hard to write because you have to get the age right. Like you have to speak to adults, but also kind of have a little bit of that in there. And that book absolutely nailed it. Like I listened to it, the audiobook, I think last year, just to make sure. I was like, this is one of the first times I've ever re-listened to an audiobook. I wanted to like make sure, like, is this as good? I've been recommending this hard for the last 3 years. Like, this is still true, right? And it held up amazing. It was still a masterpiece. Like going back through it.
Nash Wind Rider
yeah.
sequel. When?
Yeah,
I hope.
seriously.
And Justin makes a good point in the chat too, which is an interesting point. Hot take, all of Claudia Gray's books she's written after Lost Stars are better and have been getting better, which is also an interesting point because obviously each writer should get better with each successive book, right?
Yeah.
Whether you agree that's happened or not, that's always their goal, which makes the Foundational 5 very interesting because even if the author maybe does have better technical writing, which, I mean, spoiler if you're looking on video, we're going to get to later on, maybe that book isn't as foundational, which makes this a fun balance. But that's a great point. I really like that.
I mean, like I'm just never like the point I've been making about Lost Stars forever is that it captures like how to get somebody in the books so utterly perfectly because so many big points in the films are in the book and like it's almost like the films are this very linear timeline, right? That we're all very familiar with. Anybody that picks up a Star Wars book is genuinely pretty familiar with like the films, right?
Yeah.
And Lost Stars does this like curvy back and forth over top of the films. Like, you know, we go over the film and then someone joins the rebellion. Then we go, you know, we often have this whole story and then somebody does something with the Millennium Falcon, right? And like this, all this stuff happens, and it's like that is what Star Wars books are all about, man. It's like you take the stuff that's in the films, and then you expand on it. It's the expanded universe, right? So, like, if you don't understand what Star Wars books are after you read Lost Stars, then you like totally missed it. Like, so like it does kind of accomplish those goals we talked about with your first Star Wars book. It accomplishes that really, really well, and I think it hooks in readers. And honestly, I've never heard anybody have like a bad experience with Lost Stars. Like, people come out and they have genuine criticism, which is fine. Everybody can have criticism of anything, but nobody walks away from Lost Stars and is like, this book sucked, I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like,
and I'm not reading any more Star Wars books. Like,
that never happens.
You want to keep going.
Right.
Yeah, it never happens. So it serves a purpose. I would be hard pressed if we took this out of the first books. Like, honestly, it might do a better job than any other Star Wars book that's ever been written. And it's not even my favorite Star Wars book that's ever written. It just, it does the job so utterly well. Like it needs to be there.
Yeah, especially because it goes through the OT. A lot of people have seen the OT, and that's kind of what makes it familiar. I started with the original Thrawn trilogy, and then I read a lot of Legends books that Corey sent me on. I'll stop.
I did.
But
book boxes. Don't ever bring that up again, Wes.
Yeah, say it.
But so a lot of them are new stories. There are a lot of planets. There are a lot of words that I couldn't pronounce within these Star Wars books. And then I think Lost Stars was probably like my 7th or 8th Star Wars book. And like after probably when I was quarter way through, I was like, okay, I get it. I get why everybody is recommending this. It's an easy read, and it gets me from the beginning, like, of the OT. And then, like you said, Corey, it goes through the movies, and it puts you in those, you know where those spots are. It's just a different story with different characters. And then, but there are parts in there where you're like, remember on the Death Star, Sienna is one of the, she's one of the workers down there. And you're like, I can't believe it.
One of the best times meeting Vader. All right. Solid start.
Yeah.
We start, of course, with the most familiar thing. And then, hilariously, the next part of the Foundational Five, which Corey's going to chat about, is this guy, which is the most unfamiliar thing with no characters you've ever heard of. Corey, talk about Darth Bane, Path of Destruction.
Yes, I am very happy to talk about Darth Bane, Path of Destruction. And, we have this whole other project going on right now, too, at Youtini, where we're reevaluating our review system. And I'm like pushing pretty hard to get one of the Darth Bane books into the, like, top 3 books ever, echelon masterpiece Star Wars books, like up there with Revenge of the Sith and Lost Stars, because I legitimately think that the Darth Bane books also serve a lot of purposes that make it like a masterpiece. And so let's talk about this for a second. Darth Bane, Path of Destruction by Drew Karpyshyn. I've never been able to figure out how you say the name. Is it Karpyshyn? Karpyshyn? I don't remember. It says in the audiobook, but I still can't remember. Darth Bane, Path of Destruction, released in September of 2006. This is like peak Legends, in my opinion. The book was narrated by Jonathan Davis, who was like one of the great narrators that we have in Star Wars books. We need to get him on something else ASAP. Really
Corey, you missed the show last week. He is doing Brotherhood by Mike
No
Chen.
way.
For sure.
No way.
Yeah, we all lost our mind. Yeah, we had the same reaction.
Crap. I missed that. Holy smokes. I even listened to the episode, and I don't remember hearing you guys talking about that. Holy crap, that is insane.
Because we were like, because Mike Chen is like, Revenge of the Sith novelization inspired me, and Wes is like, yeah, and Wes and Jared were like, if only Jonathan Davis did it, and we Googled it, and Jonathan Davis is doing Brotherhood.
Holy smokes, that's amazing. Yeah, Jonathan Davis is a really great narrator. We sure have hyped him up, so I hope he does a good job. The Darth Bane book has been reprinted with the first round of the Essential Legends collections. Like when they announced that they were doing these books, this is one of the first books they announced. We have support from the powers that be that it's amazing, right? It's considered Essential Legends. And I think whereas Lost Stars is like the perfect like segue into Star Wars books or maybe even to canon, I think that the Darth Bane books are like the perfect segue into Legends. And let me kind of tell you what I'm coming from with that.
Speak on it.
So this is so it's set in a time well before the films, right? Like 20,000 years before the films or something crazy like that, right? Like it's Old Republic, like we are in an era that people are completely unfamiliar with. We don't know anything except that there's Jedi and maybe these Sith thing, which we don't really know much about from the films, right? Which are these bad guys that are called Sith. And it's just a whole new era of exploration. We get all these crazy force powers that it feels like you're in a video game. Like the force powers are just insane. You get a ton of dark side exploration of like that is I would argue, pretty absent from the films of like what it means to like feel the dark side. Everybody talks about like Yoda and the light side and all that stuff is in the films. We don't have a whole lot of dark side of like a true villain story of like what it's like to be part of the dark side. And then finally, it's a perfect segue into Legends because it's a 3-book series, right? And that's the glorious thing about Legends is there's so many multi-book series where like you finish one and you pick up the next one, just continue the story. Like the entire trilogy holds up phenomenally. It really, really does. I listened to the Bane books last year again on audiobook, and it was a glorious experience. And they're really, really, really good. And I think that segue into Legends being your first Star Wars books ever. Like if you don't even read Lost Stars, you don't have to read this in any order. The Foundational 5. That's the whole point of this. If you picked up the Darth Bane books, I think you have a really good chance of getting hooked on Star Wars books because you have all this weird uniqueness to it that's like villains and everybody has lightsabers and it's this weird stuff that's like different from the movies but still very much Star Wars and interesting and cool. And I don't think that really any other series accomplishes like that the way that Bane does. Like it's just so original. The entire series is so original but still very much captures that this is obviously Star Wars. You know what I mean?
And I think one of the cool things about Darth Bane, so I want to say it because I know we all love Bane. This is the Central Legends version of it. It is the hero's journey, like the Joseph Campbell hero's journey for a villain, which is amazing. Because when you meet him, if you haven't read Darth Bane yet, it starts off with him not as Darth Bane, just as a man working like a terrible job, and you see him learn and basically be like the path that Luke or more so that Anakin takes, but in like a dark side way. And it's really fun to see like those very classic tropes, which as a new reader, you can instantly recognize. But for a guy that's going to like command lightning storms with his mind.
Oh yeah. And you're rooting for him. You're rooting for him the whole
You're
time.
rooting for the bad guy.
You're like, kill that whole family. Kill it, bathe in their dark side. Like,
That'll help,
kill
right?
the child in front of his father. Bathe in the dark. Like, you want it.
That's not
freaking
hyperbole.
ridiculous.
He kills a child in front of a father to get dark side energy. Like,
Dude,
it's wild.
so dark. It's so dark. But it's like, yeah. Wes, now, the Bane trilogy is very near and dear to you as well, right? I mean,
Yes,
you read this
absolutely.
pretty early on.
This was so I read the original Thrawn trilogy, and this was my second go of reading Star Wars. It was the Darth Bane trilogy, and I was hooked immediately. So yeah, I mean, one after the other. I mean, I went all three back to back as soon as possible. It was like you said, Eric. It's the hero's journey from the dark side.
The anti-hero's
There
journey,
you go.
Jacob, in the chat. Well done. Well done.
Right.
But he does an excellent job of just describing all of those force powers. You don't have to sit down and think about how would he have done that? How does he do? I don't want to spoil it or anything, but it's very well laid out, and you definitely root for the bad guy in this one.
Yeah, they're intense and great. Wes, I'm just going to keep you going here. Speaking of rooting for the bad guy, the next book in our Foundational 5 is none other than your recently completed
I did
Revenge of the Sith
I freaking did it, guys. There was
by Matthew Stover.
There was probably what do you want to think? 15 episodes back where I was like, I have never read this book, and now I can say that I have read it. I had listened to it actually on my commute to work over a couple of weeks, I guess. And so I guess we'll say number 3 on the Foundational 5 is Star Wars Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover. So Matthew Stover wrote Shatterpoint, The New Jedi Order, Traitor, Luke Skywalker, and Shadows of Mindor. Have any of y'all read that one?
I own it.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have a great
not read it.
reputation. I hear not a great reputation.
But he wrote this, more importantly, he wrote this.
Yes.
That's right.
So, it is narrated by Jonathan Davis, and like the title of the book, it is the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, the cinematic movie. So it was released on April 2nd, 2005, which was like a month and a half before the movie came out. So if
Crazy.
you read the book, then you got the movie, and you probably went to the movie and were like, hey, they left out this. And they left out that.
Exactly. Maybe
on
the only
here?
time you read the book before you went to the movie and were a little disappointed, like in the
Exactly.
movie, like in Star Wars specifically.
This is like when This is like when they released the Phantom Menace soundtrack, and one of the tracks, like last track, says like the funeral of Qui-Gon, and you can pick it up before going into the movie. Yeah,
Remember that? Wait, but a question, Wes. But isn't it novelization? Isn't it just the same as the movie? It doesn't add anything extra.
Yes. Next question. No, absolutely not, Eric. So here's the thing. So not only is the plot, it's exactly like the cinematic movie, but it also adds like the deleted scenes that are in the movie. It also adds in like expanded universe content that was from other books, like Labyrinth of Evil, this is part of a Dark Lord trilogy. This is the middle book. Labyrinth of Evil is the first one, and then we have Revenge of the Sith, and then Dark Lord is the third book. So, anyways, he adds concepts from all of these expanded universe novels into the book. That it's never been done before like that. There's also like points from Shatterpoint. There's parts from Star Wars, the Clone Wars animated series that are in this book. So all these little bits and pieces from all these Star Wars mediums were added into the book, which helped with one of the amazing points they put in here is all the points of view and all the inner workings of all the different characters that you don't really see in the movie. So you hear what Yoda thinks. You're hearing what Palpatine is thinking, what Kenobi is thinking when he's like looking at Anakin. He's like, Anakin has kind of a darker side to him. Like I feel cold when he comes by, when he's next to Palpatine, kind of stuff like that. And a nice butt. And a nice butt. I literally, I rewound it and I was like, did he say that? And he did. So, but I've heard this in passing lots of times, but one of the major philosophical questions of the Jedi for Anakin was, is he the chosen one? He's going to bring balance to the Force. And they bring that up, or Matthew Stover brings it up quite a bit and throughout this novel. Does he bring balance to the Force? Does he bring balance to the Force? And so he took a step back, and I think it was either Mace or it was either Yoda that said, listen, guys, if the prophecy of bringing balance to the Force, is it because there's too much light and we need a more dark side to balance to balance it out? So they go over this quite a few times in the book, and it floored me. So yeah, I think it is a perfect addition to the Foundational Five because much like Lost Stars, it follows the events of a movie, and you already know about the characters. You already know the story because you've seen the movie, but you don't know the details and what they are thinking whenever, like, say, Anakin comes by and Anakin is he's having those like harsh dreams when he wakes up in a stupor, and then some of the stuff that Yoda thinks and how Yoda ends up turning into a Padawan at the end of the movie to be Qui-Gon Jinn's master. Qui-Gon Jinn being the master of Yoda. Crazy. Yeah. I did a TikTok video about that because I was like, I listened on the road. I was like, I have to record this. This is amazing. But so as it being easy to get into, this is perfect to get into because everybody knows the story. But as you read it, you learn something a little bit here, a little bit there. Yeah. And you also, it'll spring you into reading The Dark Lord, which is the book after this. And the book before it, you want to know what happens in, say, episode 2. Then Labyrinth of Evil, you kind of see hints of how Anakin is turning towards the dark.
Yeah.
And I think one of the cool things about Revenge of the Sith, why it belongs in the Foundational Five as well, like you're saying, it has all these amazing descriptors. And I think someone said it earlier in the chat. Justin said we want a good mixture of styles.
Yeah.
Right within the Foundational Five. Like Lost Stars, as Charles said, is a great YA. A lot more relationship stuff. Darth Bane is kind of a more classic narrative, but with a villain. This prose style in Revenge of the Sith is kind of unique in Star Wars, which is odd for a foundational book. But it does show how beautiful just the language and sentence structure of the book can be, which is like it's kind of like what we talked about with Ronin last year. Like, even if the fact that books like this, like Revenge of the Sith, can exist in Star Wars and you read it, you're like, oh my goodness, this isn't just IP fodder. you can put descriptors like when he talks about the dragon within Anakin, when we're talking about the coldness of being in
It's
the
really
Vader
rich.
ship, like, yeah, it's really beautiful and unlike anything
really
else.
rich.
And
I mean, I think Youtini has like multiple times in the past pretty much essentially stated that this is like the best Star Wars book that's ever been written, and like it took like an utterly phenomenal story of Anakin's fall and the tragedy of Anakin's fall, and just applied a crap ton of prose and like exploration of their thoughts and feelings, and like it just made it like it's such a good read. You can't, I speed read everything, right? Like I'm kind of notorious for this, and I miss a lot of details because I read too quick. I can't speed read this, like because the details are too important. So like this would be a book that would be so easy to just be like skip. I saw the film, but you can't do that when you read it. You can't do that because the story is just too rich. It's too rich. You don't want to do that, right? You want to get. Oh, did it hold up, Wes? When we've like hyped it up forever.
Oh, 100%. So if you get the audiobook, because the audio books dramas have all the background music and the sound effects, which make it, tenfold that much better. But I found myself skipping back the 30-second skip back, I don't know, 50, 60 times when I was listening to this, because I was like, there's no way that just happened. And I was like, skip back. And I listened to it again. And like, it's just those points that he adds to the book is just something that didn't add into the movie that makes the overall expanded universe that much better. Because you have that knowledge to, express to your friends, or it's applied to the movie and to the overall concept itself.
Sorry, go ahead, Charles.
It's the same thought that people had, with the Clone Wars television series. Is like Anakin's fall makes more sense now because there was so much story that needed to happen in Revenge of the Sith. As fantastic of a movie as it was, things do feel abrupt. And it does actually lend itself to book format a lot better because there's just time. So this is great for that reason. And I also just think it's important to have a novelization represented in the foundational 5 or whatever number we end up with. I think just letting people understand that like this is an avenue you can take, but it's not just exactly what happened in the movies. Right. That's really important.
I know we're not going to do this for every book, but I feel like I must just read the end of the introduction of this book because it's one of the best pieces of writing in all of Star Wars. And it says, a pair of starfighters, Jedi starfighters, only 2. 2 is enough. 2 is enough because the adults are wrong and their younglings are right. Though this is the end of the age of heroes, it has saved its best for last. So foundational book right there.
There's a Twitter bot. There's a Twitter bot for Revenge of the Sith. There's Revenge of the Sith quotes. I follow it on Twitter, and I want to retweet every single one of them. Like it has so many quotable lines. The romance between Padme and Anakin is unbelievable. We can't hype this book up enough. It seriously is one of the best books ever written. Maybe the best book ever written. Yeah, I'd be
that's why we're taking it out. So
sorry,
it sucks. We'll replace it with iJedi. All right, moving on.
All right, 2 more books that are in the foundational 5, and then we'll go a little more easier through the ones that we're thinking about auditioning. It's an audition. That's what it is. You want to get in the crew.
Like that.
But Corey, you're taking another one of those that just seemed like an obvious choice when we were making this because of the history of Star Wars books. Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn.
Heir of the Empire by Timothy Zahn. If you go to any message board on the internet and ask, what Star Wars book should I read first, the overwhelming recommendation is going to be Heir to the Empire, by far. It's always the highly recommended. Heir to the Empire was written by the OG Timothy Zahn. He's been around since the beginning. He essentially invented Star Wars books. He's kind of...
Yay!
That's right. Tim Zahn is not. He didn't write the first Star Wars book by any way, shape, or form. But he did essentially credited with kind of setting off the world. He kind of did. He kind of set off the world of Star Wars publishing. I mean, it was on bestseller list forever. 1991, I believe, is when this book was released. Yep. You can't ignore that significance. I mean, we put this in the foundational recommendations. This was reprinted again with the first round of Legends books. So again, we have the support from the higher powers that be. It's a perfect intro to the continuity of Legends that takes place after the films. This is really, really important in the Legends sort of canon. What is it? Canonicity? Did I say that word right?
Canonical?
Canonicity? Anyway, whatever. Legends canon.
go.
It's important for the Legends timeline, right?
Yeah, there we go. There we
everything
go.
that happens in Heir to the Empire, because Heir to the Empire was essentially episode 7 for the longest time, right? I mean, it takes place after Rajay. It kind of tells the story of our main heroes and what happened after this destruction of the second Death Star. And it does a lot of really cool stuff in the book. There are a lot of big things that happen that are very important for Legends storytelling, right? We get an intro to Mara Jade. This is Luke's wife in Legends. That character is created by Tim Zahn and is in this book. It's kind of introduced in this book. Prominently features a bunch of the pilots of Rogue Squadron that we already know and love, like Wedge Antilles. It sets up the X-Wing series really nicely. That's a really famous series in Legends. Introduces Thrawn for the first time. First time we ever get the character Thrawn, who's now hugely important with canon books and storytelling. The Rebels TV show, and is now going to be brought to live action. Like one of the first major characters to be brought to live actions from Star Wars books is incredible that this is even happening with the Ahsoka TV show.
My goodness.
We assume anyway. And we also get an introduction to Talon Card, who is a really big character in Star Wars Legends. There's really cool roguish, kind of Han Solo-like character who's featured heavily throughout Legends. We get the Solo children are sort of introduced. They're Han and Leia's son Anakin, which is not confusing at all. I will say reading about Anakin in Invincible by Troy Denning as my first ever Star Wars book. It keeps referencing Anakin. I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? Anakin didn't do any of this stuff. Like, what are they? Anyway, it kind of freaked me out. So the Solo children, you have Anakin and then Jason and Jaina. Jason and Jaina are the twins. They're Han and Leia's twins. They're unborn. So like Leia is pregnant throughout the series, and it talks about a lot of that kind of weird Force stuff is really interesting. And then Heir to the Empire was, this is a really fun fact I found when I was doing some of this research. Heir to the Empire was the first Star Wars book to refer to the galactic capital as Coruscant. First one to do that. Yep. And then George Lucas loved the idea, and he made that Star Wars canon, from Heir to the Empire, which is huge. It's one of the most important planets in Star Wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Which makes it official that George Lucas loves Heir to the Empire, hates everything Disney's ever done.
That's what I hear.
He really wishes that it would all be torn down. He's going to actually remake The Last Jedi in 4 years. So this is all confirmed.
With this story, actually.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Right, directed by Timothy Zahn, I think.
Yeah, and I think Thrawn will be The Last Jedi, actually, canonically. Yeah, great.
I think that's it. All right, moving on. Heir to the Empire is... No,
we're writing an article about it.
Yeah, that's right. Get some clicks. Heir to the Empire is hugely important. I think it certainly deserves to be in the conversation about being one of the first Star Wars books ever read by anybody. And if you go to Reddit and ask, this is what they're going to say, and maybe they're wrong.
Who knows?
I said it.
That's what I did. I did that.
I do have a... Really? Oh, it was the first thing you read?
The first thing I read, I Googled where should I start for Star Wars books? Blah, 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 blah. And this is
I think it's universally...
they said,
It is universally recommended. I think we were one of the first really big people to prominently say, maybe don't read this first. I mean, it isn't our top 5 that you read first, but
yeah, for sure.
I think there are a couple small disadvantages to Heir to the Empire that like you could maybe argue make it not a great first book to read that I'm going to bring up right now.
We haven't done that yet.
Hold on to your butts.
We haven't brought up any negativity, or not negative. That's not what this is. We've not brought up any real criticism because, quite frankly, I've not had any criticism so far. But Heir to the Empire, I think maybe could have a conversation about this not being in the Foundation of 5. Let's talk about that really fast. The book was published 30 years ago. All right, take that into account. This book is older than I am. I'm only 28. This book was published 30 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Which is naturally going to have some things associated with it, right? Like some of the language feels a little dated. Like it feels very much like an 80s, 90s sci-fi writing, right? It has that sort of complexity in language. That could be maybe a problem for some readers, particularly if you're going to go from this to reading other Star Wars books, right? Because that's what this is. The Foundational 5 is what do you read first. Like some of the language could be challenging. And I think I can say now that Heir to the Empire, the existence of Heir to the Empire could maybe be a little confusing for new readers, actually, because we have prominently featured characters that have now been very much fleshed out in canon now, right? This is not what happened in episode 7, right? Yes, this is Legends canonicity, but if you're that's the word, canonicity.
There you go, you got there.
I know. This is Legends. Yes, the timeline is different and everything in Legends, but if you don't know like everything that we all know about all the Star Wars canon and Legends differences and all that kind of stuff, this could be a little confusing going from wait, this took place instead of like Force Awakens and what the Han and Leia have other children, not been so like you see what I'm saying? Like it's a little confusing that this is a direct contradiction to The Force Awakens, right? And it's also a little confusing that we now have Thrawn brought into canon, who his story has been completely fleshed out and totally retconned. One of the only characters in Star Wars publishing that has been like the legend story is literally not true. Like you cannot say that it is a legend.
That's
right?
how it happened.
It's
yeah,
a
right.
myth. That's maybe that is how it happened. You can literally not say that at all because it is completely contradicted by canon Star Wars storytelling, right? So I could argue that, maybe I'm way overthinking this, but I could argue that maybe Heir to the Empire is a little confusing. The existence of Heir to the Empire is a little confusing in the big picture of Star Wars storytelling. And you could maybe make an argument that it's no longer one of the best things to read first. Is it an amazing book? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
8, 9, 10 out of 10, unbelievable book, but maybe not the first one you read.
We talked earlier about how many books have come out since the Foundational 5 was created. Isn't it like 5 of the 6 canon Thrawn books came out after we
I think
created
something like
this or
that. At
something
least
like that? I mean, 4 or 5, something like
at least
Thrawn,
3, if not
Thrawn
4.
was released.
Oh, wow.
I saw this because Del Rey is giving away a Thrawn copy, right? Because Thrawn came out like 5 years ago today. I think is that what it was? Yeah, Thrawn came out 5 years ago today. This was the year that I started Youtini, and Thrawn being on the top of my stack of books. It was one of the first modern Star Wars books that I purchased. Like, I'm going to dive back into Star Wars books. I haven't read a book in like 3 years. I'm diving back into Star Wars books head first. I bought all the canon books. Thrawn was at the top of my list. I specifically went to Barnes & Noble and got that black edition cover. You guys remember it? Do you have that, Eric? Yes, there it is. Look, it's black.
That bad boy.
Oh.
It's
matte
awesome.
black
I
too.
love
It's
it.
like
It's got
a feel to it. Yeah, I specifically bought that book, and it sat at the top. So like, I was like,
there.
Nice, classy. Look at that. It's like almost perfect. It's perfect size. Look at that. It's freaking Eric. Did they model this off of you? What the hell? It's like exactly your size.
We all learned something tonight.
Thanks for that thumbnail.
You're welcome, buddy.
Yeah.
We'll get there later, though.
Anyway.
But yeah, all good points. And who knows if, I don't know, we're going to be talking about Thrawn a little more later on. But before we do that, I want to round out Foundational 5 because Charles.
Also, really quick, sorry to interrupt one more time,
No,
Eric.
go for it. Go for
to
it.
be clear, we haven't made any decisions about this.
Oh no, this is all conjecture.
This is a huge. We're having a huge team. There's a process that's going to occur for like the next month or two, if we can get to it before celebration. We'll see. A huge process is going to happen behind the scenes at Youtini to determine what we're going to do with the Foundational 5. This is just the 4 of us like talking shit about all the books, right? So like,
and nothing
we don't know
might
yet.
change.
We don't know yet. Like I'm saying that I personally, being on the committee, not in charge, right, but being on the committee.
I am not
that
a
helps decide
committee.
this. I'm not a committee. Yes. Like, I'm saying that I could personally maybe make the argument that maybe Heir to the Empire doesn't go there. But
yeah,
I want to see your comments,
right,
y'all.
Corey. Nobody's taking my opinion, just by the way. So just to let you know, I would throw in. Well, we're gonna talk about it later.
Ooh, look at that tease. All right, Charles, it's been quite a year for you because one man has come to the forefront of the Star War. And it is the man that rounds out our Foundational 5 with his titular novel, Kenobi, by John Jackson Miller. Why did we put it in there? Why does it deserve it?
That's right. So Kenobi, of course, I'm the one taking this book because why wouldn't I? It's been around for some time. It came out in 2013. It basically tells the story of Obi-Wan's early days on Tatooine. And he kind of quickly realizes, even though he's not really fully functioning as a Jedi anymore, there really is a lot of scum and villainy on Tatooine. And he finds himself kind of entangled in that with the locals, trying to kind of sort through some craziness that's happening. Now, all in all, it sounds like a pretty small story. That doesn't necessarily, as is explained, strike you as something that would be so foundational. But y'all, this book is incredibly well written. I think one of the best written Star Wars books that's out there, does such a phenomenal job of putting you into the head and the mindset of Obi-Wan with sort of the stresses that he feels after his failures with Anakin, his struggles with trying to commune with Qui-Gon and feeling like he's sort of just been left for dead, kind of out in the desert. The fact that he has to lay low, right? Because he's technically a wanted man, but
Stay
he
hidden,
can't just,
if you will.
Yeah, exactly. But he can't just stand by the wayside when he sees injustice. Like, that's just against his very character. So it's just so Star Wars, because Obi-Wan is the consummate Jedi. Okay, I'm going to say, I know I can hear people yelling in the chat. What about Yoda? What about this? What about that? What about Loden Greatstorm? Yeah, okay, I hear you. But like, Ben, he's the first Jedi we knew. And so getting this story is really important. It builds perfectly on everything that we learned from the films. So it's a great transition book in that way as well. I really just think it's a phenomenal book, and I think it belongs in the foundational 5 for those reasons. There are some cons that may catch up with us, right? Like the fact that there's going to be the Disney Plus series that will most likely contradict some, if not all, of what's in this novel. Sure. We may find ourselves running into an Heir to the Empire situation. As of right now, that has not happened yet. And it's a simple enough story, though it's very well executed, that it could still serve a purpose of, hey, this is a Legends version of what happened. This is a canon version of what happened. And it wouldn't be as confusing, I think, as what we have necessarily with Heir to the Empire. I know we've mentioned a lot of these books, Disney and Del Rey, and everyone is kind of doubling down on it, saying, hey, this is Essential Legends. They're doing the Essential Legends collection. This is in the most recent wave, I think it was, right?
Yeah. So
all those reasons, I think another reason that may just be, I don't know, I'm not going to say this is selfish, but this will serve the community, I think, at large, the Star Wars community at large, the reading community at large, by keeping it in the foundational 5, because maybe, just maybe, people are looking for more information about Kenobi in the coming months and years as we get more of this canon story, and that kind of leads them to either Youtini or any book site out there, and they kind of learn more about Star Wars books. So I think it could serve an important purpose in that respect as well.
I think you make a great point, because at Youtini, we love the evolution of Star Wars books and where we're going in the future. We're always looking towards the future, and it's so exciting. We are never in favor of the eradication or forgetting of Legends, ever. It's so important. And I think that's a great point I hadn't thought about, Charles, is that having Kenobi in the foundational 5 ensures that if you're reading Star Wars books, you have to acknowledge there are 2 timelines. And that is actually very important, that you acknowledge that Legend stories are still valuable, even if they contradict canon. And part of the fun, and I actually do think it is fun, of being a Star Wars reader, is having to be able to switch your mind between those. We switch our mind between different realities all the time, and different universes and different sets of rules. That just happens in day-to-day life. It's just rarely so one-to-one. So you make an excellent idea that if we keep Kenobi in, it will say, hey, you want to read Star Wars? That's awesome. This is a great book, isn't it? Yes, it is different than the show that you just watched and rewatched and rewatched and rewatched, because let's be honest, it's going to be great. But that's cool to build up that skill set, and maybe that's something that book can bring as opposed to the other 4. I hadn't thought about it that way. I love that a lot.
And just as a final point to really solidify my argument, because I got to fight for my boy Kenobi.
Yeah,
if we try to take Kenobi out of the foundational 5, you will have to fight me, and I do have the height.
You are very tall.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Listen, the other than the fact that I'm being actively canceled in the chat right now, there are some really good points on here about from like comments about Heir to the Empire. There are some really good comments in here about like some of the ideas that I was thinking about too. Like Justin Krieger said, I wonder how much DNA the book is, or the series, the TV show Kenobi is going to share with the book. That's a really good question, and also a really good intro to John Jackson Miller, which are great points. I think I personally kind of hope that The Kenobi show kind of steers around this book in an interesting way. Like this book is pretty unique in the time. It's a very short period of time, so you could still make the argument that unless
it's a pretty small story overall.
it is.
Honestly,
Yeah, it really is a pretty small story that doesn't take place over a long period of time. Luke is basically a baby, I think, pretty much through the book, right? So like,
it
it looks like
almost immediately.
Yeah, it looks like from the trailers from the show. It looks like he's kind of battling with Lars, and maybe he's a little older. And we see we see Luke as kind of a 10-year-old or 8-year-old or something like that, like in the trailer. So maybe this book will still be able to nicely exist. I hope it doesn't directly contradict it. I will say, I've looked at the analytics on our site on this, and as soon as they announced the TV show, our content around Kenobi and like the book profile page and like the Kenobi collection are both performed a whole lot better than they have in the past. So like people are interested in this book, and I guarantee you that as soon as the Kenobi show comes out, like this book is I wouldn't be surprised if it hits the New York Times bestseller list again.
I mean, there's a reason that the Barnes and Noble is coming out with one of those leather-bound editions of Kenobi and Cessna's Deception. Like,
yeah, I think I think it really has an opportunity to fit nicely. Like now, if it does totally contradict it, then we might, like you said, Charles, kind of end up in a Thrawn situation, like where like it's totally been retconned, I guess, in a way. And it's Legends, it doesn't matter. That's not the real story. I hope that doesn't happen with this. Also, John Jackson Miller is a really cool guy, and I hope that doesn't happen to him.
He is.
Yeah.
Because that would be somewhat heartbreaking to me to see his story sort of totally ignored. But I don't think it's going to happen, quite frankly. I really don't.
We'll find out. Our lives are going to change so much in a month and a half when that show drops, and I can't wait. But what else might change is the makeup of the Foundational 5. Now, folks, we have now given you the case for the 5 that exist. We are now going to go not rapid fire, but like in a quick audition of the books that might supplant some of these books or might be in addition to them. Let us know as we go through them which ones you would like to see and why. And I'm going to start off with a book that, without hyperbole, I truly do think changed my life and changed the trajectory of my reading career, of everything I think about literature, especially in Star Wars. So I'm going to vote for this one. It's Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule, a book that we have talked about ad nauseum on this show, and a book that, if it were not of a certain caliber of quality, possibly could have sunk an entire initiative and era of Star Wars forever.
That is correct.
I think the weight that it carried in that regard, the quality that it had, and the amount of readers that it brought into this whole new era firmly, I think, supplants it as a member of a Foundational 5 of books going forward. I think that if you are reading Star Wars books in 2022 for the first time, you cannot ignore the High Republic. You cannot ignore what it has done to the industry, what it has done to the New York Times bestseller list, what it has done for new Star Wars fans. I mean, one of the people on our team, this was her first Star Wars book she ever read, and now she works for Youtini. Like, this is bringing people in a new way with new characters, with a new diverse set of faces, and it has just changed Star Wars storytelling in a way that we haven't seen in years and years and years. So, I mean, I'm not going to go on super long about it. Light of the Jedi is one of the 5 most impactful books in Star Wars publishing to me.
Yeah, that's not like a controversial opinion.
Not
either.
a hot take.
Like, it's like, seriously, like all the reasons that I said Bane is such a great choice of like being this original era and blah blah blah. Literally, all that applies to this book too. Like, honestly, one of the strongest contenders I think to be. I think honestly, this Light of the Jedi might be what really kicked off the conversation of, ooh, maybe we need to update the Foundational 5. Seriously,
I remember that conversation.
It literally was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it came out, like it's top tier or one of the best Star Wars books ever written. Like, seriously, top 5, maybe top 3 literally ever written. Yep. Utterly phenomenal read. I have no criticism.
The Youtini book of the year.
So good.
Out of all the Star Wars books that I've read, like, you get into the conflict immediately and it ties you in through the entire book. You don't have
you understand the vibe, everything. You get it immediately.
And we talked about looking towards the future, and I mean the initiative is not slowing down, right? So like we're talking about this now at the end of phase 1, but there's phase 2, there's phase 3. I mean, this is going forward. The footprint doesn't get any smaller.
Right. And I think that could be the only thing that could possibly be a con against it, is that if you start Light of the Jedi, then, I mean, of course, you can go to youtini.com and hit the High Republic button and then get a reading order. That's great. Everyone knows that.
Everybody.
But it is also akin to putting something like a Vector Prime or something in it that's like, all right, read this. But then you do have a pretty long reading
40 book
list.
series or something.
So-
yeah, that's a good
That's true.
point.
That's true.
That's a good
But-
point. But that is, you could argue that's kind of a disadvantage
exciting.
of main books, right?
Yeah, I know.
Like
You only get
There's only
two.
three. There's only three,
Yeah.
and you're done with the era, basically completely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple other older Republic books, but they have nothing to do with Bane at all.
No.
And you're like, all right, moving on, 20,000 years forward. You know, it's
Yeah.
like,
And part of
Yeah.
reading these, of course, is that there are so many books, which is why Corey, we have two other ones that I kind of want you to do 1A or 2A and 2B here, and they're these guys. It is both Thrawn, which we talked about earlier by Timothy Zahn, and Thrawn Ascendancy, Chaos Rising, which are the beginnings of two Thrawn canon trilogies. Only one could probably get in if we're going to replace them, but I want you to make the case for both. Why they each deserve it.
For sure. Thrawn is, this is, if I have a hot take on this show, besides despising iJedi, I don't know if that's a real
Why
hot take
stop
anymore.
now?
Why stop now? Which we clarified a couple episodes back. If you haven't been listening, blah, blah, blah. I don't actually hate iJedi. It's mostly a joke, moving on. Thrawn by Timothy Zahn, unbelievable origin story. I listened to the audiobook when I was working on the trailer about 4 months ago, I think, and it held up unbelievably well. So I've listened to it in the last 6 months. It is still one of my favorite books of all time. Absolutely loved it. Great origin story of the character Thrawn. We introduced Thrawn. It references Rebels a whole bunch. Like, it's a really great sort of introduction to that character. Also, if you're not going to read Legends, which a lot of people picking up Star Wars, I think the gut reaction for a lot of people is to start with canon. I don't think that's like a negative reflection of Legends. I think that's just what people kind of
Are doing
believe. It's like
nowadays.
if you're going to start reading Marvel comics, you want to read in the same universe as the Marvel universe. You know what I mean? The MCU.
Yep.
So I get it a little bit. This is a great introduction to this incredible OG author, Timothy Zahn, right? Like, that lives in canon. So it kind of wins both of those arguments. Maybe the disadvantage of Thrawn, maybe being an original book, is I don't know if it was originally intended to be a 3-part series. It kind of feels like it wasn't when it was written. Like, it is very much a standalone story, and like, there's no banner on the cover or anything. This book 1 of the 3-book trilogy.
Yep.
Like, no one has ever said this is the Thrawn trilogy. Like, we've had to, as fans, unofficially dub this the first canon Thrawn trilogy, even though that's
Right.
not what it is. And there's 2 more books. What is it? Like, it's a
Thrawn Alliances and Thrawn
Alliances
Treason.
and Treason. Yeah,
Thrawn
Thrawn
Treason.
Alliances, Thrawn Treason, and yes, Thrawn. Yeah, it's the series does not hold up super well in my opinion. We sort of famously didn't absolutely love these books. Now, honestly, in the next couple of years, we should seriously consider revisiting it. I think because
I'm
we never
down.
have. It was
I
early
agree.
on in Living Force career
Yep.
when we looked at these books. And we really didn't love, Alliances at all. Like, it's one of the lowest rated books on the Youtini site, which is unfortunate. And Thrawn Treason is it feels like Timothy Zahn is finally I'm going to start writing Star Wars books again. That's how it feels in the book, because he sets up the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy very, very well. So, read Thrawn. Maybe you could be a good first Star Wars books, but if you go into reading Thrawn knowing that it's the first of a quote unquote 3-book series, you might be pretty disappointed with the second 2 in the series, which sucks. I really hate that.
Yeah.
So
And I
maybe
think
it's
one
not
of-
a great first read.
Yeah. And one of the points that you did bring up, though, which is, for me, the biggest reason why it kind of argues for the Foundational 5 would be the Rebels tie-in. Because a lot of these books
For sure.
don't tie into the animated shows, and I think having Governor Price as a main character is relatively rare. And I think if you want to grab that audience and we're looking for variety, could be an argument, but I like that a lot.
Yeah. Now, switching gears to talk about Timothy Zahn writing hella good Star
Yeah,
Wars.
speaking of our other book of the year.
Yes,
the year
exactly.
before.
Other book of the year. Seriously, Timothy Zahn getting his hit the ground running. Totally hit the ground
Yes.
running. He figured out how to write Star Wars books again.
Yep.
Thrawn was
rolled
amazing.
up his turtleneck sleeves.
Exactly.
And just went for it.
exactly. He pulled it up, so it's over his chin. No, I don't know what he does when he writes. Maybe that's what he
No,
does.
you
I
nailed
don't
it.
know.
You nailed it. That's exactly
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And he was like, you know what? I'm writing a trilogy. Give me the contract. It's going to be 3 books. I'm starting writing the book knowing it's going to be 3 books. I'm in no way backed into a corner because of an animated TV show. Timothy Zahn utterly shines with the Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising trilogy, or the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy, starting with Chaos Rising. It's one of the best series in canon, bar none. It's incredibly original. It's gritty. It's very true to the character of Thrawn. And it really developed that character well. I think like the Thrawn we see in Rebels can be very much appreciated by his development in this series.
Yes.
Really fantastic. Although maybe a little complex for new readers. Like Justin Krieger in the chat said, it's the best Star Trek novel wearing Star Wars wallpaper, and it's maybe a fair assessment.
That description, and you know what else would love that description? Our buddy Rick over on Legends Look Back.
That's right. Huge Star Trek fan.
And it's that way,
sure. It is,
because
it's unique and weird and sciencey, and there's a bazillion names and a crazy family tree hierarchy. It could totally be overwhelming for a new reader, unless you really like that gritty stuff. You know, in that case, then you might love it. You might love it. It does have a lot of references, however, to the previous trilogy. I don't know what it would be like reading Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy without having read like the original Thrawn book and like an Alliance, because the whole scene with
Someone
Anakin
on the
is
team did that,
there.
I think.
Did they?
You read this first. Well, and Stephanie Mack in the chat right now is saying that the first canon trilogy is so vastly improved by the Ascendancy trilogy. So if we do decide to put Ascendancy in the Foundational 5, maybe that could retroactively improve those. So if you read those first, you get a better overall experience. Because again, our whole purpose with this is to start new readers on to have the best experience possible. So if we can take a few folks and flip the order and get them going in the right way.
We need a double blind case study. If we get some volunteers that never read Star Wars books,
never read Star Wars before,
or read Star Wars. We'll give them $50 to read all these books and then study their responses. All right,
I've never read Star Wars before, Corey.
All right, this one here, yes. Corey.
Also continuing my books. Yeah, I did. I didn't mean to get 3 in a row. Also amazing book, Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. I famously read this book in one sitting. I started it one evening after dinner and didn't put it down until like 4 in the morning. I had to go to class the next day. I was in med school. And I couldn't put it down. It was utterly phenomenal. One of my personal best experiences I've ever had reading a book. I absolutely loved it. There are like it's Qui-Gon as Anakin, fantastic story, amazing twist at the end.
Qui-Gon Obi-Wan.
Oh, what did I say? Oh, Anakin and Obi-Wan, didn't I? Yeah, sorry. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, fantastic story. I really liked it. Maybe some disadvantages. It doesn't connect super well to really anything else. It's kind of its own standalone novel, very much tied into the prequels for sure, and to Phantom Menace and stuff for sure. But I don't know. Like it feels like I don't know that we have a lot of modern Star Wars fans that are coming into Star Wars books that are like, you know what movie I utterly loved? My favorite movie of all time, Phantom Menace. I want to read nothing but Phantom Menace books like going forward. I think that, like, yes, those are fans. Charles, you're one of those fans, right? I think the time,
baby.
I know exactly. I think the time has passed for people being like, Phantom Menace is my jam. That's what I want to start with. I think the time has passed. Like, I think those kids have now grown up, right?
Look how old we've
to buy books.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think there is something to say about people wanting to know what happened before the Phantom Menace, and that kind of scratches that itch.
It does. It does. But again, it's not a great prequel either. Cover art too. We also have another Claudia Gray book already in the Foundational 5 with Lost Stars, and we don't want Reddit saying dirty things about us in the subreddits about how we love. They use different words, but we love Claudia Gray. Well, it's true. We do love Claudia Gray.
She's real good.
You could make an argument that maybe all the first books shouldn't be from the same author. Maybe so.
And Master and Apprentice is interesting too, because I think I would kind of make Master and Apprentice a combination between Lost Stars and Revenge of the Sith in the way Claudia Gray writes about the Force is also very singular. And you see this in The Fallen Star as well. But the back of the hardcover book is a quote from Qui-Gon about how, I choose it because it is the light. I don't choose to win the cosmic game. And it's a beautiful quote. And Master and Apprentice is really one of those books in the Star Wars universe that teaches you that Star Wars books can also be meditations on life. And I think in addition to cool lightsaber combat and quips, which there absolutely are. Master and Apprentice is a fun read. Don't get me wrong.
It is.
There are so many scenes that are like, this changes the way I think about some things, because the way Qui-Gon talks through Claudia Gray's writing about the Force and the nature of the Force is a really beautiful thing that I think once you read, you're like, oh, Star Wars books can be this. So it's an interesting way to. It's the polar opposite of Bane, right? You see how the dark side can be this, and this shows you how the light side can be, and it's really, That's a book.
Really,
I mean,
well develops
it's
Qui-Gon
so
too.
good.
If you walk away from the prequels, you're like, man, what character I want to learn more about? Freaking Qui-Gon, baby! Like this book is, it might be the Qui-Gon book. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, the Qui-Gon
really
book.
good.
I completely agree.
Yeah, but I don't know that people want the Qui-Gon book. You know, as the first Star Wars book they read,
foundational
you know
and be
what I
like,
mean?
that's it.
That's it. That's all I need. Yeah, for sure.
Well, speaking of books that actually do have a logical next step, Charles, you got a few here we're going to go through. Let's start out, though, with the beginning of one of, honestly, our most talked about and favorite but complex trilogies, which is Alphabet Squadron by Alexander Freed. Why would this belong in the Foundational 5, one of our more recent editions?
Yeah, so, I think that Alphabet Squadron has a few things going for it. As you mentioned, it's part of a series and part of a series that really has no weak entries. Like, I really think that no one book outshines the other in this entire series. It was home run after home run after home run. So there is a nice place to go after reading Alphabet Squadron, but it also, it serves as a very nice transition piece into understanding how things went from the OT to the ST, because there is still a whole lot of, unknown in that time period. But this book kind of follows, like, what does it mean for the rebellion to try to become a legitimate government? What does it mean for the remnants of the empire to try to hold on to the power that they still have? What happens when those two clash? It also scratches kind of that itch of the Legends X-Wing series by giving us the canon story. And this book is like dark. I think if there's two, it is. If there's two things that I think make this book a little bit less approachable for like the average reader, I think it's how dark it is, because you actually walk away from this book almost feeling like you experienced trauma yourself. And it's very technical writing. Like Alexander Freed is known to write very technically. I think really any Star Wars book that focuses a lot on ship warfare, starship warfare, is very technical kind of. It almost has to be. So those are things that kind of make it a little bit less approachable. I know Andrew is going to be very sad when I say I don't think this is really, really a legitimate like contender for the title, if you will, of being in the Foundational 5. But it's up there. It really is.
Yeah. I don't know that there is a. Sorry to interrupt, Eric. I don't know that there is a more like divisive. Maybe like I don't know if that's not really the right word, because it's not like. It feels like people either loved it or they were just like, this book hurt me. Polarizing is a better way to put it. It's like The Last Jedi, like a little bit like of Star Wars canon books, and that like it is an objectively unbelievably well written book. It's objectively phenomenal.
The technical skill is so good.
It is objectively correct, and anybody that says that the book is bad is wrong. That's how I feel. You know what I mean? Like that's how I feel about The Last Jedi, right? Like the movie is phenomenal.
Like it, the skill is evident.
Right, the skill is evident in the book. It's utterly good, but like it's also you also have to acknowledge like the divisiveness a little bit of like people walked away from this experience without a super pleasurable experience, like for some people, because like you say, it's traumatizing and dark and gritty, and like Justin Krieger said in the chat, it's a very good anti-war Star Wars book. Like it very much is. Like it's very dark and heavy, and like I think that I think some people were chasing that, and I think there's a lot of Star Wars fans that would pick this book up and be like, "Holy crap, this is what Star Wars books are. I want more of this." You know what I mean? I think that's definitely there, but I also think that people. For sure. I also think that a lot of people pick this up and be like, man, this was heavy. I don't know if I can read all the Lord of the Rings books. You know what I mean? Like it kind of might feel like that. Like,
I think
like The Hobbit. Start with The Hobbit. That's Lost Stars. All right. Like the Lord of the Rings books though were like, okay.
That's actually a great comparison. But I also like I like Alphabet Squadron.
Also because Andrew's such a Lord of the Rings fan. It's also perfect for him. I get it.
Yeah,
I get why you love
Andrew Bell completely why this works, man.
Sure.
I like this in here because I do like the idea that if we're looking at the scope of Star Wars books, because like one of the things that bugs me is when people call like superhero films just superhero movies, because Captain America Winter Soldier and like Black Panther are not the same movie. Like they're different. They are different genres. And I think for Star Wars books, Alphabet Squadron does show a completely different side of the coin. Like most of our books in the Foundational 5 have to do with Force users of some kind. Lost Stars, obviously, less so. But we are looking at Force users, and a lot of Star Wars is actually about the people on the ground, or in this case, in the sky, in fighters. And I think pilots are such a core component. Like your Poe Damerons, your Han Solos, like these are people that are in ships in space, and having a book that focuses on those people, I think, pretty key.
It's still different though. I think people are going to see the Rogue Squadron film. What I imagine the Rogue Squadron Star Wars movie is going to be like, if I had to guess what it's going to be like, I think people are going to see that and be like, man, this was great. I want to read more Star Wars books. Then they're going to go read Alphabet Squadron and be like, well, I'm going to cry myself to sleep now. Like, you know what,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, it's just that heavy vibe, you know, and people loved it.
Well, and there are two other books totally that we have here. Like we can have Alphabet Squadron. We also have talked about like Rogue Squadron and the Paradise Snare. Two books that we also love that deal with those folks on the ground that again are formative for I think a lot of folks. Rogue Squadron was their first book. Paradise Snare, Charles, was Paradise Snare your first book? I think you told the story before.
The Paradise Snare was my first book. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I still vividly remember picking it off of the bookshelf at Barnes and Noble.
And I think those kind of things can absolutely sculpt people for on the ground books. So the idea that the Foundational Five would feature a book that is either a pilot or a smuggler to balance out all the Force users is definitely up on the air. So as we go on here, that could totally work. But sorry, Charles, I'm looking in your notes here. You did point out one specific issue that does happen with a lot of these pilot books or like rugged books that do maybe
that start Corran Horn.
Yeah,
correct.
Well, so the Rogue Squadron series in particular, I'll say from the legends that I've read. Yeah, sorry, the X-Wing series. I always want to call it the Rogue Squadron series. The X-Wing series, which starts with Rogue Squadron. It was written in 1996, and as a result, it does have some very prominent, outdated ideas. In particular, basically, the female characters are largely written as love interests. There's a lot of commentary. You know, they all have to be, you know, small waisted and all those kind of triggering kind of comments that there's a lot of focus on their looks and not a lot of focus on their substance and what they're contributing to the story. There are actually some very strong female characters in the books. It's just never what's focused on. Right. So it feels very misogynistic. I remember, you know, I read them when I was much younger. I mean, not 96 or whatever as they were coming out, but
and far more powerful.
Yes. Nice.
It wasn't as noticeable then, which is commentary on just society in
the
general
era,
since then. But I think the further we get away from when these books were written, the more and more prevalent it's going to be, or apparent.
Yeah, I was a little worried about this. I listened to this because they're releasing a lot of these in new audiobook format with the new Essential Legends collections, and Rogue Squadron is when I listened to that. You know, and it's our boy that narrates it, right? It's Mark Thompson that narrates it, and like, dude, I know that he had to read a lot of these lines and be like, "Ooh, this is icky." Like listening back to it, I was like, "This is problematic, seriously," and like some of the descriptions and stuff. And you know, it's been too long since I've read Heir to the Empire or that series. It's been way too long, and I wanted to say that I worried that would be a thing, but I don't want to say those words because I don't know if that is. It's been too long. It's been too long since I've read. I don't know if those books also suffer from that, and I don't want to falsely accuse Timothy Zahn of having also a little bit of that too, and because of that age. But I fear it might be there. I need to go back and re-listen to those. You know, and it's on my list literally for this year. But like all the books of this era were like that, right? So you know, that is a bit of a problem. Like I could certainly see how that could make people uncomfortable and like make them not want it. It could hurt the feel of the book. It did for me, for sure. Yeah. Like I went into the Rogue Squadron of like, I'm gonna like Corran Horn now, and then he sucked, and I hate him. So,
and that's such a key thing. Like, if we as a company, as a community, are gonna call something foundational, that means whoever you are in your life, whatever your identity, your background, you should read this book and feel awesome and be like, I want to continue reading this. You should not have to make a concession about how it makes you feel, and some of these books, even some of the older books, don't require those concessions, which is why we put them in. Like there are books that are written even 10, 15 years ago that are still phenomenal, and I love those. So I think we do. You're totally right. We do owe it to our listeners and site visitors to make sure that we call that out when we can. And
dude, you walk out a woman a woman goes she has no Star Wars friends, right?
Yep.
Young woman, no Star Wars friends, goes to see the Rogue Squadron film by Patty Jenkins by herself because she has no Star Wars friends. And she says, I want to get into Star Wars. I want more people to connect with. They stumble on Youtini.com. We recommend you read Rogue Squadron, the book. Oh, this is perfect. I just saw the film. I know it's different because I read all this stuff on Youtini.com. And then all the female characters suck. All the way through the book.
But then what if instead... Alpha's gone. You know what?
Fair argument. You
know what? That's an interesting thing where it's like, I can imagine one of those videos like, hey, did you see Rogue Squadron? Instead of this, what about this?
Exactly. That's exactly it.
All great points. And then Paradise, honestly, having read Paradise Cinema recently too, I think that absolutely has some misogynistic overtones, but it also says Han Solo as a character. While maybe not formative and foundational, I think it's an interesting kind of book to start with smugglers and things like that. But it's part of the conversation. And I love that we did bring this all up because I think one of the books, that has brought up new characters that we haven't seen before and characters that never quite got the spotlight that they deserved all the time was this one right here, Queen's Shadow. Maybe the most famously infamous book in Youtini history because of the tech problems we had hilariously in reviewing it. But I think that if this was to be in the foundational 5, my argument would be this. We talked about the importance of YA earlier. And I think that no book maybe, I guess, shows the importance of the YA genre better than Queen's Shadow. It takes a character like Padme that a lot of people didn't feel was particularly served to her fullest potential in Revenge of the Sith and the prequel trilogy. And it gives her so much agency. It gives all these background characters so much agency in excitement and the trilogy as a whole, which again, our Queen's Shadow review just went up last week. We'll be talking about that later in May. The trilogy really kind of altered how a lot of us began to think about not only these movies, but these characters. And after we read Queen's Peril, which I wouldn't put in the foundational 5 just because it's the second book in a trilogy, it changed how we viewed the movies, maybe more so than any other book in the foundational 5 currently. So I think that ability, more so than even the content, could put it up there for me, which I think that
it's certainly, it is definitely it's a super women-centric book. It is very much a by women for women type of book, which we absolutely need. I mean, Wes, you said that earlier. We need more representation in Star Wars. That's for damn sure. And I could definitely see a plausible argument for getting this into one of the first books you read. We've heard a lot of people say that this is what got them into Star Wars books.
Yeah, oh my god, a Padme book?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I get it for sure.
And it helped me because it kind of follows the events of Phantom Menace. So it helps you. It's like cheating on the test. It's not cheating on the test. It's like doing what you should do,
Wes?
and studying before the test. And that way you know the events before you go in, and then you get thrown a curveball. But hey, you still know the overall concept, and then you get get those details that kind of make you go, aha. So
yeah,
for sure.
It's a whole different point. And then of course we're gonna round out tonight. Wes, I want to bring up these two books here. That you've talked about quite a bit. I know you're a huge fan of. It is the anthology books from a certain point of view, and from a certain point of view, Empire Strikes Back. If we're just talking pure volume of story, to have a new reader be like, what? Who writes Star Wars? What are they about? I maybe have some commitment issues to larger novels. Wes, why would we put these pretty unique collections maybe in the foundational 5?
Yeah, so maybe. I loved this book because 1, it was my first canon book, and 2, I was flabbergasted that it followed the story of A New Hope. And so as I watched A New Hope before I read the book, and every single action sequence and character that showed up in the movie was in this book. It had the side story. So you have this main road of the movie and all these little connecting pieces of all these characters that have to do with A New Hope. And it's not formally canon, right? The stories are like that are within the book itself.
I think it's mostly canon.
Mostly canon, right?
I think it is canon. I think the book is
Yeah,
canon.
it is
but,
canon
like,
enough.
Okay.
yeah, it's
So,
canon enough
let's
with the knowledge that yes, I suppose this could be retconned later. Like it has that
Yeah.
feel to it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
So
Exactly.
it gives you, I mean, just some of the reasoning like behind why the little red droid in New Hope, why his motivator blew up. Like, why did that
love the
happen?
story.
You know, you're like,
Wow,
weird, right?
R5D4 slander. All right. My goodness.
It needs to be on a t-shirt. Oh man.
But like, it's if you've read Star Wars books and you've been like within the expanded universe for a while now, you've heard every single Star Wars character has their own backstory, and these books are an epitome of what that is. Every single character is
almost
in
like
that.
almost like too far though, right?
Almost, yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Like too
Yeah,
far.
like they take a lot of the goofy, campy that are not real background stories at the time when Star Wars was filmed, but have been made into legend, like almost an occult classic.
Yeah,
Like-
sure.
Like Wilro Hood, for example, has an entire backstory, which is not that's like it's a joke from the original movie when it came out, but now he's got a real canon story. So like
Mainly
it's hilarious at times.
It's almost like the book is kind of what Celebration is whenever you are doing like you're dressing up. So you always try to
Cosplay,
find the
yeah.
cosplay.
Yeah.
You try to find the most obscure thing that you can find within Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then you find out there's like another 40, 50 people have the same idea as you do, and you're like, this is exactly what we were looking for in Star
Right.
Wars. So this is one of the main reasons it's easy to get into. It's like studying before the test. You have but like a split second of it, like character has been on the screen, flashes by, especially in the cantina scene. You'll see these characters like the Deveronian and like the just like the weird astronaut guy is there for half a second, and he has his own story in here. So
I mean, hey, you get to learn why the bartender doesn't like droids.
Yeah, and a lot of it is really rich, really good storytelling
Really
that
cool.
legitimately adds to
Yeah.
the films. But like, arguably, a lot of it is not, and is kind of goofy and dumb that it even exists.
Yep.
Like the weirdest story that I would maybe argue should not have been written is the freaking what's the monster in the trash compactor called again? The
Dianoga.
The Dianoga has a whole backstory. It's like, why the hell does this
Yeah.
exist? Like, an author jumped on that just because. Like, it doesn't add anything. It's just kind of goofy.
So like Justin Krieger said in the chat, this is kind of like a spin-off from the Tales from series in Legends. So there's Tales from
Jabba's Palace,
from Mos Eisley Cantina, from Tales from the Bounty Hunters, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
for sure.
definitely.
And I think one of the cool things that it does is it is kind of like an audition for future Star Wars writers. Like a lot of Star Wars writers that are currently writing in canon, you can find in these anthology books. Like Kevin Scott wrote a story, Claudia Gray wrote a story, Mike Chen wrote a story. Like a lot of these folks started in the shorts and now they've moved on and are writing canon. So in that way, it could be a foundational. All these books we talked about tonight,
maybe
in some way could be.
I could maybe see the argument if you want. I think one of you guys said earlier it's very non-committal. I think it was Eric. He said that. Like, if you wanted a Star Wars book that is very non-committal, of like, maybe I'll read Star Wars books, set it on the nightstand, flip through 2 or 3 stories a night, and it'll take you a couple weeks to get through it. Like, that's what you did, right? Yeah,
That's totally.
I remember you telling that story. Yeah, I think it's kind of like that, right? It certainly does the job of expanding on the characters, connecting to the film. It fits all of our criteria. What am I saying? It's perfect. Let's just replace Lost Stars with it. I mean, there it is.
But
you don't have criteria, but it almost like hacks its way into fitting all the criteria.
That's
You know
what
it
it
mean?
is. Yes, it does. It does kind of hack its way in there.
Technically, I did the assignment, right?
You don't have to.
Yeah,
you don't have to
but
reread
listen,
the past 5, like the past chapter, to remember where you are in the book. You're like,
right.
that's what
It's
happened.
like-
You already know.
It's like getting a copy of the answers and just memorizing the letters, like A, D, C. Just like straight down the list. That's what it is. That's how it made it into their criteria. It's just like, yeah, the answers are correct, but like you didn't learn anything in the process. You know what I mean?
Your med school is showing.
yeah.
I didn't cheat my way through med school. Let's get that clear.
All that being said, though, folks, we have all these books that we've talked about. I think, obviously, some of them seem more obvious to stay. Whether we're going to stay with 5, whether we're going to expand to 6 or 7, whether the current books are going to stay or new books are going to come in, we're not sure yet. And I think this is literally the first conversation we've had about it we're going to have for the next month. And what I would love from all of you that are listening or watching, send us a comment, send us a message. What do you think, as a Star Wars reader, should be foundational for readers in the future? What do you think says the most about Star Wars reading now? What reflects the past but encourages the future? All these books are great in their own way, and I'm so excited to see what's going to form the basis of the next generation of Star Wars readership. I can't wait for all that to happen, but of course, that is a ways down the line. A little quick tease. Next week, currently on the schedule, pending change, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be getting you ready a little bit for Star Wars Celebration. It is going to be about a month away, so we're going to be talking about some of the things that we can't wait for, maybe some of our predictions, of course, all the Youtini news that we know when we know it, but we will see you then for that prep show. For now, I want to say, I hope you have a great week, hope you have a great night, and that'll do it for this week's episode of The Living Force. If you support us on Patreon, thank you so much for a lot of support. Look out for that Revenge of the Sith commentary coming your way in the next week and a half or so. And a special thank you goes out to OK Endar, Brian Dooley, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, and Matt Billington, Elizabeth Cloutier, Freddie C., and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command. You can find us on Twitter. I'm at Eric Eilerson, Corey is at Doc Star Wars MD, Charles is at Z Hankel, Wes is at Boss Wes. A special thank you to Matt Davenport, our amazing editor, and Ryan, our graphic designer extraordinaire, and Wes, our producer and community manager. Thank you to Corey, Charles, and Wes for potting with me tonight. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. And as always, may the Force be with you.